Hey, everybody, welcome back to Black Lotus Live, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And tonight, we're going to be talking about the alien agenda and possibly what they want from us. Are they harvesting us? What are they doing? So, anyway, but before we get into all that, um, I, I heard some terrible news today that Anne Rice died
Right.
last night. And
Yep.
I'm kind of torn up about that. She is absolutely one of my top 5 authors. And, I've known a lot of writers. Being a writer myself, I've known a lot of writers. And one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to writers is when the author doesn't do thorough research. And she did. I mean, she was just detail oriented. And that's one of the things I loved about her. Plus, I loved their Vampire Chronicles. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the alien agenda. But before that, I'd like to talk about Elon Musk and his recent announcement that he's going to be implanting humans with his Neuralink chip next year. I don't know when, but it's coming soon, apparently. And
Yeah, he's
the reason, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, he's working closely with the FDA, and he just got some kind of certification or some kind of approval to move forward with the FDA.
Really?
Yeah.
The reason I want to talk about this is because it's kind of a double-edged sword, in my opinion. I mean, I don't want one. I mean, he's going to introduce it for paraplegic people so that they could, for instance, control their computer with their mind.
Yeah.
And I've watched a video that he put up a while back where they had implanted a monkey, and it was showing how the monkey was doing it. And I understand what this could mean. I mean, this could turn us into humans 2.0, really,
Right.
And,
Right.
I mean, if you wanted to order an Uber, just think about it. I mean, I think it may make, for instance, our phones obsolete, our smartphones. On the other hand, I don't trust it.
No.
And call me one of these tinfoil hat people, but I just don't trust it. I don't trust that, they won't be able to control our thoughts, what we think, what we do. I mean, you know how it is now on the computer with cookies. You go to a website looking up, I don't know, refrigerators, and suddenly you're getting ad after ad after ad after ad everywhere you go for refrigerators.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, imagine if that happens in our minds. I mean, and is there a way to shut it off? I mean, I can't imagine. I have insomnia to begin with, and then we have these ads popping up in my brain.
It's like one of my ultimate nightmares would be that somehow they find a way for us to work while we're sleeping.
Oh yeah. They'll figure it out.
It's just like,
I wouldn't doubt it.
yeah, it's just like one step closer to being an AI,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like being being a robot.
Right.
What's
But what do
frustrating
you
is
guys
I
think?
do work in my what's frustrating is I do work in my sleep all the time, and I wake up and it's not done, and I'm like, doggone it, why isn't it done? I just spent the whole night working. Why isn't it done? So
That's how I do a lot of things.
Well, I think
That's true.
I think this Neuralink technology is it is inevitable. There's no way to stop it.
Yeah.
I think the early versions, I'm not going to have anything to do with the early versions. I'm sorry, but like, I'm not an early adopter, not for that kind of stuff. So maybe in 30 years, I'll maybe opt in. But I think I think it is inevitable. I think it's part of our evolution as a species, and I think it will be messy. It will be dangerous. It will be painful. But that's what evolution's like. Whenever we change, it's usually a destructive process, but it is necessary. I mean, just like disclosure, just like alien disclosure, it's going to be messy, it's going to be scary, but it has to be done, and in order for us to advance. Just like puberty, for instance, puberty is an unpleasant experience, but it's got to happen for you to change.
Well, that
I
brings
think
up
it's
a
just
good
like
question.
the virus, vaccines as well.
Right. When are they going to give us this chip?
They haven't announced that. They just said sometime next year.
No, I mean, like as we're growing up, because it's going to
Oh.
become
Oh,
more normal. Is it going to be something you get on your 13th birthday, or is it something you're going to be when you're born? They're putting it into you.
That's
When you
interesting.
stop growing.
Well, yeah, because in a way, I heard the human brain doesn't fully mature until you're 24. So I'm not sure how well it will. They're going to have to test it before a lot of testing before they find the age, if it's going to be younger than adulthood. But that is a good question. You know, I went to a school recently and to speak, and there were fifth graders, and the teacher was like, "Okay, everybody, put up your devices." I was like, "What?" Nobody ever told me that. They all had like laptops given to them by the school, and they all were like logging into the school's Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I never had that, so I'm just saying, like, technology ends up good. It ends up trickling down to children. I'm one of the last generations. I'm so happy for this. The internet didn't come about until I was 13 years old, so my entire childhood was internet free, and I'm so thankful for that. And I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 21 either, and it was a flip phone. And I'm thankful for that too. I really am thankful, because I don't think it's good for children at all.
no, I don't
see
either.
kids
I
all
agree
the
with you.
time. All the time I'm seeing them with iPads. My first graders are sitting there telling me they have a phone. And I wonder, do they really have a phone, or do they just have one they can play games on? But sometimes I don't
I have a
know.
granddaughter. I've got a granddaughter. She's got one,
A real one.
and she's 7. A real one,
Yeah.
and she's 7.
Yeah. And she
Yeah.
can call mom or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why I said it doesn't surprise me, because that's how old most
But
of my kids are.
the kids are using them like as soon as they can pick something up, because it's like a toy at the beginning.
Right.
You know, they see the parents with it, and so they're fascinated and they want it too. And that's how
Yeah.
it all comes about. I mean, it's good for like emergencies and stuff like that, or if they're, that's how they communicate anymore though. You know, it's adaptability.
I remember seeing a phone out several years ago. I haven't seen it recently, but it was a phone for kids, and it had just one button on it, and you program that button to call your parents.
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, that's not a bad idea, actually. But no, that's
Right.
not what the kids want. What kids want are games and access to the
Right.
internet. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, this is kind of leading into it as well. So I was listening to news. So apparently Instagram, which is owned by Google, which is now Meta, but they've been developing this product called Instagram Kids. So it's supposed to be kids, but their own internal research showed that Instagram is incredibly hurtful for teenagers, and now they're still trying to develop this product for kids, which I think is just a terrible idea. Yeah.
well, I could just imagine the pedophiles that would stalk that place.
Exactly.
Pedophiles, bullying by other kids,
Mhm,
cyberbullying.
mhm. And that's the other thing. You know, Wild, you brought up, you're so glad that you didn't have the internet when you were a kid. I never even got on the internet until I was in my almost 30. I
Same
guess
thing
maybe.
with me too.
I
Late.
don't remember.
Yeah.
But
I
Not
was
me. I
late
was
30s.
lucky. I got one early.
did you?
Yeah.
I mean, I was back. It was back during the days of AOL
Right.
And-
AOL. I
and-
remember AOL.
Right.
and
Yeah.
MySpace, and so I remember doing that. But yeah, I mean, you brought up bullying. You know, I mean, I was bullied as a kid. I can't imagine having the internet and having
Me
people
too.
on the internet bullying me there too. I mean, geez, God, you know. So anyway, but yeah, this whole Neuralink thing, I just don't trust it. I really don't. Call me old fashioned, call me tinfoil hat. That's fine, but I don't believe that anything is done without some nefarious purposes behind it. You know, and so I don't know. I
It's a
think this whole
control.
Neuralink thing, it is, and I think that
Yeah.
that's what they'll be doing is they'll be controlling us.
Yeah.
So,
Billy
Just like
Bishop
one
hitting it on
more
the head.
step closer.
I like what Billy Bishop said. He said people used to say, look at
Lack of information.
lack of information was the problem with people. And now I can't read it because it's so small.
The internet proved that wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean, we have the whole world at our fingertips with the internet, you know? So,
And yet we still have the ignorance we have.
Right. It's like it reminds me of this quote. Stephen King. Stephen King has this quote about writing, and he's quoting a hooker. I think the hooker says, "It's not what you have; it's how you use it." And he's talking about writing. You know, it's not your vocabulary; it's how you use your vocabulary.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, damn, that's not what I thought.
Well, I mean, it means the other thing, but Stephen King was trying to apply it to writing.
Yeah.
Because he's Stephen
Right.
King. He's a weirdo.
Yeah, but he's a great weirdo.
Yeah, I
He's
was
a great
gonna say.
weirdo. One of the best. One of our best weirdos.
But anyway, so yeah, let's talk about the alien agenda. So there have been people out there who have claimed that these aliens, or at least one of the species of aliens, is actually harvesting us. They're harvesting our blood. They're harvesting our organs, what have you. A lot of abductees have claimed that they witnessed other people on board that were being chopped up into little pieces and stacked like logwood. And then you have other people who have been abducted, like Kim, who actually had pleasant experiences overall, you know. And I don't think that, Kim, I don't think that you felt intimidated in any way during your abductions.
No, not at all. But then again, I didn't experience any recall of being examined either. So I don't know how drastic that actually was, since I don't have that recall. It might be different if I did.
Well, and I tell you, I have that recall of being examined, and it was terrifying. And, you know, I mean, it's left me with anxiety, you know, I mean, and people say to me all the time, I want to be abducted. And I'm like, man, careful what you wish for, because it's really not
I
that
tell them the
pleasant.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and not only that, but you don't know the species you're going to be abducted by.
That's exactly right. And
They all have different agendas, I'm sure.
That's right. I
Right.
think they do, you know. I don't know
Their
what they
views on
are.
things are all different.
Yeah, I don't know what they are. Some people say that the ones that seem benevolent, like the Pleiadians, have ulterior motives, you know, that, you know, they say they come in peace now, but later on, that may not be the case, you know.
Well, like David Jacobs is totally, he's all, I want to talk about two people, David Jacobs and Preston Dennett. David Jacobs is all into the evil aliens. They have a plan. There's something coming up that's going to be bad for us. Preston Dennett is on the other side. I love Preston Dennett, but he's on the other side. He thinks it's positive. He thinks they're at worst neutral. But I think there's probably a spectrum, you know. And I think some people that are on the negative side, they don't want to look at the positive stuff. And the people on the positive side don't want to look at the negative stuff. It's very dualistic.
Well, do you think that
The
possibly it's a way that for them to kind of invade and create their own species here with us and do
Right.
the whole hybrid thing?
Right. So this is not my original idea, but this is my analysis of the idea people have said. People have said that, you know, they want to take over the planet. They want the planet for themselves. Now, one way to do it is militaristically, which is brute force, but that's kind of old school. What they're saying, it's not my idea, but what David Jacobs has said is that another really brilliant way of taking over a planet is by slowly putting your DNA in the planet. If you just hybridize people and put a bunch of hybrids out, eventually it will be full of your species. And that's another way of taking control of the planet, which is much smarter to do.
And
And I kinda think that's
we've been
what's
doing
going
that
on.
forever, you know? I mean,
Right.
with ourselves, you know? I mean, we'll take over, like for instance, who was it that it was the English that used to do this with the Scots, and prima noctum. I think that
Yeah.
was called. It was called
Yep.
basically first night. After a couple would get married, the lord of the land, who would be English, would have sex with the woman, with the hopes that they would basically be breeding out the Scots. You know, I mean, so we've been doing this forever, you know.
Right.
So what makes us think that aliens wouldn't do the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And in the process, upgrade the human,
Right.
you know?
And I think that's what is
One-
happening.
It's like one more step to evolution again.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's also the idea that goes with this that says that something. Well, I was listening to Richard Dolan recently. He interviewed somebody. They were talking about Christian ufology, and they really thought, they were like, look, aliens have been here for a long time, but they specifically thought that the Greys are like the Greys. They only showed up in the 50s. They're pretty sure, they're like, Greys showed up in the 50s, probably because of the atomic testing we were doing with weapons. So. But the reason I say that is, okay, so if the Greys are the ones that are hybridizing with us, and they've only been around by the 50s, there's also this idea that another species of aliens came to the planet when we were very early hominids, and they modified us to be what we are today.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if that's a different species of alien or if that's the same species, but I mean...
Well, I think what you're talking about is the Anunnaki from Mesopotamia.
Okay.
And yeah, and they modified us when we were, you know, early in our evolution.
Mhm.
And the reason being is so that they could make slaves out of us
Right.
and mine gold. And eventually, you know, and we started calling them gods, apparently.
Right.
And evidently, I mean, the thought is that people finally caught on to what the Anunnaki were doing. And so the Anunnaki left. And if you research this, all of religion is based out of Mesopotamia. It started there and went on. And so yeah, I mean, so we have the Anunnaki to thank for Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, on and on and on, you know,
Right.
because it basically all spawned from that, you know, because we called them gods.
Right.
Coral is asking if she says, I wonder if these abductions follow family lines. And we're believing that to be true as far as the things that
Right.
we've come across.
I believe so. I believe it comes from my maternal generational line. Because
Yeah,
when
I
I was
believe that-
abducted, I was shown like a family tree, and it showed my grandfather and on my mom's side, and my uncle and my mother, and then it showed me, and then it showed who eventually became my son and daughter. So yeah,
Now-
I truly believe that it's generational.
Mr. Crowley asked if that's so, why do they follow bloodlines? I have two potential explanations for why these bloodlines are followed, but they kind of contradict each other, so I don't know which one's true. One explanation is that the Greys are simply us in the future, and so the reason why they follow bloodlines is because we're their ancestors. So if that is true, then the aliens that abducted you, Damien, they're your offspring. I mean, they're your descendants way in the future. Who knows how many? Anywhere from 2,000 to 2 million years in the future. And so that's why they would be interested in your bloodline specifically, because it's also their bloodline. Now, the alternative, I didn't come up with that one. Someone else came up with that one. But the alternative reason I thought of is this. I really think that whatever's abducting us can also travel through time. So I have the idea that, like, let's say they abduct you, Damien, right? And they become interested in you. Well, if they can travel through time, then they're maybe like, well, I'm interested in Damien. I wonder, why don't I just check out what his ancestors look like? So they go to the past and then they abduct them. And then they're still interested in you. And they're like, well, I wonder what his future descendants are like. And then they go to the future. It's basically the equivalent of you're watching Netflix, you know, and you start watching season 2 of some show. And then you're just fast forwarding to season 1 or season 3 or whatever, you know. if it's so easy for them to travel through time, I think they might just get fixated on one bloodline, and that's why they're going back and forth, because they're interested in that bloodline.
I
Why
don't know that
do
it
you think that
necessarily
it's
means
just the
negative
Greys? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll answer that, and then Terry, I would like to hear what you said. Yeah, I don't think it's just the Greys. I think we're abducted by multiple species.
No, with
Yeah,
as many
I agree.
stars and planets out there, and we only think of it on a linear level. It's on a much grander scale that we don't even think about. But look at just the ones that is on the linear level.
Exactly. Terry,
And
were
I
you
mean,
gonna say
that's
something?
more than great.
What I was saying is I don't think they just follow a specific blood type, like, oh, negative. I think that they're following a particular, from way back whenever they decided to do this. I think they were looking for specific genetics in people, whether it's their height, the blonde hair, I mean, that's not necessarily it, but I'm wondering if there's something specifically genetic about a particular thing way back, and they just realize that it works best with their DNA.
Well, that's true.
Certain
Some people,
testing.
that's a really good point, because some people have incredibly unique DNA that's incredibly useful to. I'm talking. This is not science fiction. This is actual science happening now. Scientists have discovered that certain individuals have incredibly interesting DNA, and they exploit it. There's actually this really famous case. This is really sad. It's one of the disappointments of science. But there was this Black woman, and someone cultivated her stem cells in the past. I'm so sorry, I forgot her name. Maybe I'll put it in the comments to respect her. But there was this Black woman, and somebody started harvesting her cell line years ago, and they found out that she had this incredible property. I don't remember what the property is, but they basically kept her cell line alive for decades and decades and decades. And they didn't tell their family, and their family didn't have any rights to this. So that's a mistake we made. But the point is that certain blood people do have incredibly rare DNA, which is incredibly beneficial as well. Yeah.
And it could also have something to do with like immunities. Is that what I'm trying to say? Where you don't get ill very easy? Because it seems like most of the people that get abducted hardly get ill.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah.
I have found that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to talking about that tonight. About 2 hours ago, as a matter of fact, with one of the super soldiers. That
Really?
the ones that are abducted, we have found, and I have found this myself in research, that our immune system seems to be very much higher than those that have not either come forward or been abducted or taken. Myself, I was. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go.
I was just going to say that I was telling her that I know of a couple others as well, including myself, that I've had all my childhood shots and everything. I've had one childhood disease, and I've been around my 5 sisters, my mother, my stepfather, my 2 kids, and as well as another family that had kids that had measles, chickenpox, you name it, twice. I never got any of that. I've had whooping cough once, and that's when I was 2 months old. I've not had any of the other childhood diseases.
I'm the same way. I don't get sick. Occasionally I get like a head cold or something like that, but generally I don't get sick. It was about, I want to say 6 years ago or so, Terry brought home the flu from school, and we were just dying. We were so sick. And prior to that, I don't remember the last time I had a flu. But yeah, and there's a rumor going around that people who are abductees aren't getting COVID.
Oh.
And I don't know how true that is, but
no, I haven't got COVID. Everybody in my house got COVID.
That too.
I haven't got it, and I woke up one time with 3 gray aliens next to my bed, so that's all I remember. So perhaps I'm an abductee too. I wanted to give respect to this woman. So her name is actually Henrietta Lacks, and she was born August 1st, 1920, and died October 4th, 1951. She was an African-American woman whose cancer cells are the source of an immortal cell line. The reason why her cells are used is because they're used, they double every 20 to 24 hours. So they're incredible cells, and they're used to study the effects of toxins, drugs, hormones, and viruses, and the growth of cancer cells without experimenting on humans. So this is an individual that had these incredible cells in her body.
Huh.
That's quite interesting.
One of the things that was so traumatic for me when I was on the operating table was the confusion. And I remember screaming, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question, why are they here? Why are they doing this to us? And I don't know that anybody really has a true answer for that.
Yeah.
The closest I can say, though, is that they're trying to interbreed. But what's the reason for that? What's the reason for the hybrids? Is it for the sole purpose of taking over? Is it because they need a new planet to live on? Is it because they want to take us off of this planet? I mean, there's all kinds of
here's
ideas
what I mean about this. Why the type of experiments that they're doing on us? I mean, for instance, when I was on the table, they put an incubator down my throat and filled my stomach with air and then injected a needle-like device into my navel. What's the point to that? I mean, I just don't understand that,
Well, this is not the first time I pointed out. I personally don't work with vertebrate animals. These are animals that have bones. I prefer working with invertebrates. They're more interesting to me. But I have been around and I have seen people experiment with vertebrates, which we are vertebrates. And I got to say, I've said this before, but the things that we do to animals are incredibly similar to the things that grays do to us. And why do we do it? We don't do it because we're mean. We do it because we want to find out things. Sometimes we do it because we want to help these animals. But I'm sure it's traumatic for I'll tell the story one time. One time I was in Colorado. I had to hike up this huge mountain with a scientist. We had to cross a river. We went up to this pristine, beautiful area. There was nobody around, but there were these big pools of water, and there were little salamanders in there. And what the scientists did is they used these nets. They grabbed the salamanders out. That's kind of like an alien abducting you from your home. They took them to a little tent, which was perhaps like an alien spaceship to them. And they measured them. They put an implant in them, actually. They cut off a toe. It didn't hurt them, but they cut off a toe to mark them. And then they put them back in the pond. To me, that sounds just like an alien abduction. Exactly like it.
Can you imagine the other salamanders when they got back? You are not going to believe this shit. And then the other salamanders make fun of them, and
Yeah, exactly.
And it sounds just exactly like what we've been through.
Yeah.
Exactly like it. I mean, almost scarily exactly. I mean, like I said, they cut off the toe to mark them. People have little dip marks on them. I mean, I've done experiments where it's called a mark recapture experiment with beetles. So I get the beetles and I mark them. I actually puncture a hole in their elytra, which is their wing covering. It doesn't hurt them. And then I release them and I'm able to keep track of them. So that's potentially why they mark us with dip marks, scoop marks. Could be that.
Yeah, that's just
you
like
think that-
I talked to one of the super soldiers, and he was telling me that he asked me, he didn't ask me, he told me, he goes, you have a scoop mark between your ankle and your knee on your left leg. I had never paid no damn attention. And sure enough, I do. He goes, the women have it on the left, the men have it on the right.
Oh.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah,
Now,
that's been the
another
ones
thing-
that's been abducted.
Another thing I need to point out is that these grays are scientists. They're obviously scientists. Look at their ships. Okay, those ships were engineered. Their ships are not natural. It's not a tree that grows in the ground. They engineered them. They are scientists for sure. And so, why wouldn't a scientist science? Why wouldn't they experiment?
But they're not.
Does that
It's
make
just
sense?
not the grays, and they all got different shapes of ships and everything. From
Okay,
the
I
motherships.
mean every
to-
alien. Every
Yeah.
alien that visits this planet is a scientist. They all engineer their craft.
I agree.
I have to disagree with that.
Okay.
because we have people who go up in rockets called astronauts. Now they didn't engineer the rocket. They're not scientists.
I think every astronaut has been a scientist. You're right; they didn't engineer the ship, but everyone has
A
been a scientist.
human did. A human did.
A human did, yeah. I think a better example, Ralph, of what you're trying to say is like William Shatner, for instance. He just went up with Jeff Bezos in a ship, and he's not a scientist. So I do get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. But then once again, what Kim said is that their species is scientists.
Right.
There are scientists in their species. But that is a good point. They're not all scientists, but they're definitely, their culture does
science.
value science.
They have a group. They have a job just like we do.
Right.
Makes sense.
When most people think of aliens, not us obviously, but when most people think of aliens, they think of the little gray men with the big heads and the big eyes. But I'm seriously of the opinion that there are a lot more species visiting us, or perhaps not just visiting, but staying here, perhaps in underwater or underground basis.
Yes.
How
Been
many
here.
of these? What's that?
I said that they've been here, that
Yeah.
they never left even.
Yeah. How many of these species do you think are actually working with the government? And are there other species that are just rogue?
That could be any number of be anything.
The reason I ask this is because, Kimberly, you brought up the SSP. And Ralph and I did an interview on our podcast a while ago with Tony Rodriguez. And he says that he was a slave for the secret space program. And
Right.
he said that while he was on, I don't remember which one of the planets it was, he encountered, because I asked him, I said, were they just grays? And he says, no. He says, we did see grays, but there were other aliens there as well.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, then obviously, our government is working with multiple species.
Right.
But that's
And
if
our-
you believe in the whole super space program or secret space program.
I don't know much about. See, I've heard the stories about the government working with ETs or just quote unquote aliens of all kinds. I don't know why. That's never fascinated me. That never interested me. I've never gone down that rabbit hole. I think because I'm a biologist, I care more about the raw elemental animals, and that's more of a political thing. Aliens working with the government, that's politics. So I'm kind of like,
Right.
yeah, politics is fine, but I don't really. Also, I want to say hi to Ryan Sprague, who's in the chat room.
Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, Ryan.
Didn't even notice you.
That's terrible.
Wow.
I can't get in there and say hi to everybody. My computer's too slow for me to jump to another screen.
Same thing with me.
But I do.
I think that everything's connected. I really do. I really think that everything's connected and everything works hand in hand somewhere along the line.
I was going to say something about the government. I have a thought that why would they only be working with Americans, the American government?
Right.
And if they are working with other, I'm sure it would have leaked out by now. I don't see how everybody can keep their mouths closed. So in one
I'm
aspect, I
friends
don't
with
think
one.
that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying I don't know how, unless we've heard from other countries. I don't see how the government would be working with them, because I can't see them just working with ours.
I don't remember who it was, but some science bigwig that works in the government in Israel came out
Right.
a little while ago and mentioned that, the United States and Israel do work with the aliens.
Oh,
Now,
they
for this
do.
guy to come out and say that, that's kind of big news. It really is, because he's extremely well respected. And so if the US and Israel are working with aliens, then you can bet your bottom dollar that Britain knows about it and is
I have a-
possibly working with them as well.
I have a friend in Poland that is a super soldier as well.
So the Polish government is involved as well with these things.
Well, then, yes, it's very likely that our government is. If it's so, I'm saying I didn't hear that other governments actually are working with aliens. So, if that's the case, then yes, ours probably is. And then why are they keeping it secret? Why are any of
But
them keeping it secret?
Our
Because they
government
made
is,
agreements that we wouldn't agree with.
but then again, our government is like everywhere. Every time something happens, you tell me that the United States military and government's not there. Like if something happens in Switzerland or something, the United States is already there.
Right.
In every
Yeah, well,
continent. Every
yeah,
continent.
The United States has military bases everywhere over the
Everywhere.
world,
Mhm.
so they could swoop down. Well, so I guess I'm trying to think. I think I could see a way how the government would have started working with the ETs. I think it probably started with crash retrievals. I think there were crashes. The government got them. Then they're like, "Hey, these aliens are out there," and then they probably started contacting them. Maybe they did CE5 or something. That's potentially how that communication started, is with the crash retrieval.
Well, with that in mind, what did you say that the government started working with aliens in like the 50s, like 1952 or something like that?
Well, I was talking specifically about the Greys. I'm saying, the Greys is one species that visit us, but I was listening to Richard Dolan speak with Christian ufologists, and they were just discussing how the Greys really only showed up in the 50s. There's not a lot of mention of them before, and that coincides with the atomic testing we were doing. So perhaps that drew them in, and that's when we started getting Grey activity.
What about Roswell? That's supposed to be Greys.
Right.
That
Around that
was in
time,
40
maybe 40s or
47.
50s. So around the time after the first atomic bomb was tested, yeah. There's actually Jacques Vallée just wrote a book, and Jacques Vallée is a French ufologist. He helped Steven Spielberg with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's also a computer scientist, astronomer, but he just wrote a book about a crash retrieval with witnesses that happened before Roswell, actually, and it was very close to a nuclear testing site. So there is a crash retrieval in America that precedes Roswell.
Yeah. I've heard of that. I don't remember where it happened
I
though.
think it's New Mexico. I'll look it up.
Was it
real
New
fast.
Mexico?
I
Was
think
it?
it's New Mexico.
I was thinking it was more like up toward like Ohio or something like that, but I don't remember. But yeah, and so why, if the government is working with these aliens, why? For what purposes? I mean, aside from exchange of technology.
Right.
Do they possibly have no choice? It's work with us or else.
I
I
can
think
see
it's an
that.
exchange of technology with and with humans as well, and that with humans, then you have they have the ability to harvest as well, the eggs and whatnot.
Do you think
That way
that the
they can-
government is aware of what's actually going on, what the agenda actually is?
Isn't that
I
why
think-
President Eisenhower signed that treaty?
Well, what I'm saying is why is the government continuing to work with these aliens as though they're under contract if they know that they're slowly breeding us out?
I would think because of if to keep up with technology, so Russia, China, whatever. I would think that just to stay up on the side of technology itself.
Or it could be because it keeps them in a place of power. Our government, our
I just
people.
want to jump in and say
Total
that the
control.
book that Jacques Vallée wrote is called Trinity, the Best Kept Secret. The crash was in 1945 in San Antonio, New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
I just seen the Trinity advertised yesterday. Wasn't that with Paula?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, co-author Paula. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the government. Why would it work with these aliens? I mean, I think they just see them as the way they see another country. You know, we have to work with another country just for whatever reason. So,
But then again, why not?
yeah, right. Exactly. Why not?
Why not?
Why wouldn't they work with?
Well, like I'm saying, I think it keeps them in power. Because I mean, I'm sitting here, yeah, a control of one way or another, but whether control, power, prestige, any of those things, you know, they won't be their lineage or whatever. Maybe they get to stay safe, or they get to have whatever benefits they want, mansions, cars. You know,
I think it's the learning of both,
genie.
of back and forth.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
I think it's the exchange of learning, you know, from each other, whether it's technology or whatever, you know, because they don't have emotions and things like we do, and I'm sure that they're curious of that, as to what that
of
feels
our emotions.
like. Mm-hmm.
Well, personally, I think that the Greys are emotionless because I believe that they're biological drones. In my experience, there were a bunch of them around me on the table and on the ship, but they were being led by this tall Gray that was up on a catwalk in the operating room. And so I think that one was in total control of what was going on, and it was controlling the smaller Greys. So I personally think they're biological drones, and so therefore they can't emote emotions.
And they may not be the only ones that can't as well.
I wonder about these Greys because I've heard a lot of stories about them with other species of aliens. And I kind of wonder if, you know, somewhere in the galaxy, there's a Best Buy where they can all go get these biological drones. You know what I mean?
I have the same thought. Yeah. I'm like, I think these Greys are just like mass produced and everybody just picks one up, buys one at the store.
Yeah.
R2D2s, you know.
Yeah.
What about the reptilian?
Yeah. There's even Greys associated with the reptilians.
From what I've heard, this is all just rumors, but I've heard that reptilians are the ones that are in control. The hierarchy is that reptilians are at the top.
Right.
And there are Greys that aren't biological drones, but they're very tall. I've heard that there are very tall Greys, and there's also mantis.
I think there's three different. I think there's three different types of the Greys.
Okay, yeah, yep. And then the praying mantis type is actually very common as well.
Uh-huh.
Which I mean, a praying mantis kind of looks like a Grey anyway. If you look at its face,
It's like an insectoid.
Yeah, an insectoid. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine who had an encounter with one of those praying mantis types, and he said it was pretty terrifying. Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I've heard that too. That the top of the hierarchy are the reptilians, and I kind of wonder why. But yeah.
Well, I have to mention too that as far as this is the current thinking in biology, but I think it's valid. It says that that humans, we're mammals, like dogs are mammals, a giraffe is a mammal, humans are mammals. Mammals actually came from a reptile. So all our ancestors are reptilian. We have reptilian roots. And then before the reptile, it was a fish actually. So it goes, a fish evolved into a reptile, then a mammal. But anyway, I'm just pointing that out, that our ancestors are reptilian.
Well, with that in mind, do you think that the ones that dwell in the supposed underwater bases are perhaps amphibian?
I mean, that
would make sense.
Yeah, I could see how that would be very beneficial to do. Yeah.
And see, I've wondered if that's why we are discovering new species, so-called, you know, if that isn't part of what their animals are or whatever, instead of just saying that, you know, instead of it being a new species that we just found out about, if it isn't something that's related to them.
Right. It's kind of, its origin is from them or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. You know?
I think it was Phil Schneider who was talking about the aliens that he encountered in Dulce, New Mexico, I think it was.
Dulce, New
And-
Mexico.
Yeah.
Those were reptilians.
And I wonder how long they've actually been here, because there's been reports from that area from back in the days of the Old West of aliens being there.
Mhm.
So I just wonder how long they've been here and if they have always been here.
I think some form of intelligent life has been on this planet for a long time. Like I said, once again, the current thinking in biology is this, but I do think it's valid. Our earliest ancestor is about 9 million years old, okay? The planet, people think it's about 2 billion years old, okay? So that's a long time without humans. If we've only been around for 9 million years and the planet is 2 billion years old, there's a lot of time for another intelligent species to have developed organically on this planet. And I think it has.
Do you think the Earth was theirs to begin with?
I really don't know, but I have to think that the planet was not engineered. The planet did come about naturally. And then something came along later. But I think these species that have been here before, I think they did develop naturally through the process of evolution. I do think that. Now, can I ask you, define what you mean the planet is theirs? Can you go more into detail? What do you mean by
Well,
that?
I mean, do you think that they were here before us?
Okay, well, yes, I do think. I do think there are intelligent species that have developed before here. I think the term is cryptoterrestrial. Cryptoterrestrial, I believe, is a term. And I believe it was developed by Ivan Sanderson, a biologist. But if I'm using the term correctly, I think it means that some of these quote-unquote aliens are actually just Earth inhabitants that have been here longer than we have. And that's all it is. Yeah.
I think there were several different species, and I believe that they were fighting for ownership of the planet, to call their own. And I think that maybe they made agreement to coexist on different continents.
Well, yeah. In fact, even the Hindi religion talks about that there were these gods fighting in the skies over us.
Right. And just like in Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible, and we're going to get crap on that, the battles that they fought would had to have been nuclear weaponry, due to the fact that the thickness of the sand turning to glass would only you'd need 3,800 degrees to melt sand into glass in that thickness. And they didn't, just for a civilization that was that early on, they didn't have that technology. It had to come from somewhere else. And just like the vapor is the turning Lot's wife into a pillar of salt, that's vaporization. Again, the technology.
Well, and getting back to the whole Hindi thing I was talking about, I mean, they have depictions that are ancient, and and it shows whatever it is sky that they're in, and it looks like craft, and it has smoke plumes coming out of it and fire, and so so it just makes me wonder, how long have they been here? Some of them.
The Chinese have written have depictions of the same thing. They called them dragons or whatnot too, but they used the the wording or the vocabulary that they knew at the time. Whereas ours is a little bit more, I would say, more advanced, and we use different vocabulary words to express or describe exactly what the crafts look like.
A lot of people make fun of Giorgio Tsoukalos, but because of his hair and all that.
Dr. Hair.
Dr. Hair. But yeah.
I nicknamed him that a long time ago.
Honestly, I like the guy. And the reason I like it is because I believe in the whole ancient astronaut theory. And what he says makes a lot of sense to me. They have been part of our evolution. They created us in the first place, and they've been part of us ever since.
Absolutely.
So although our government may have been started working with aliens in the late 40s, I don't think that that's when they first showed up.
Right. Yeah, I
No.
don't think so either. Yep.
Yeah.
When do you think that first showed up?
Oh, who knows? Personally, I believe they injected their own DNA with us and created us. And I think personally, now you may argue with me, Wild, because you're a scientist, but I think that that explains the missing link in our evolution.
I was wondering that as well.
I think same. But I mean, they couldn't have just showed up in the 40s. There's depictions of them in hieroglyphics in cave walls and everything.
Right.
Out in Colorado and everywhere. So they didn't just show up in the 40s, that's for sure. Native
Right.
Americans and all over.
We may have started working with them in the late 40s after Roswell or whatever. But no, I think that they've always been with us, and they have been part of our evolution, and I think
Look
that
at
perhaps
Antarctica.
that's what they're doing now, is that they're promoting more evolution.
Right.
So we would become, at the top of the show, we were talking about Elon Musk and his Neuralink. And I said, that we would become humans 2.0. Well, I think if the aliens are promoting the next wave of evolution for us, we would actually be humans 3.0 because they've done it before,
Another interesting thing is that, another interesting about their agenda is this. Really, 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 truly, worldwide disclosure is in the control of them. They control it. If they wanted to, today, right now, they could become a parent, and it would be indisputable that they're real. Why aren't they doing that? That's part of their agenda. Why haven't they told us? Are they waiting for something? Are we not ready? Are we too dangerous?
Well, a lot of people say that we're not ready, and they're waiting for us to be ready. Well, when is that going to be? I mean, unless we develop this new mass consciousness and stop fighting each other constantly and having these stupid holy wars and stuff, until we can get to that and come to the realization that aliens do exist, that it'll never happen. So maybe this whole hybrid program is based on that.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering what would make us ready? Are we just talking about it and an emotional level where we can handle them and get along with other people, or is it more on a genetic level that they're waiting for enough change?
I think that we are getting there. It's good. It's a slow process, and I don't think that it's going to happen anytime soon. But I think culturally, I think we were bashing the internet earlier, but I think the internet has a lot to do with it. But culturally, I think we're opening our eyes to other cultures and not seeing necessarily other cultures as the enemy, but more of interest. I mean, prior to the internet, I remember when we went to war with Iraq in George Bush Sr.'s administration. And we saw the people in Iraq as just brown people. We didn't really, we barely even saw them as people at all. They were just the enemy, and I don't think that that's the case so much anymore. We still have, things like Al Qaeda and all of that crap, but I think we're stepping away from that, and we're realizing that we're all human beings. And I think that that's the first step in this process,
I think we're closer to that than before.
As I said before, genetically, the current thinking in biology is that genetically every single thing on this planet is blood related. So I don't know how closer we could be. Then we're all related. I mean, I'm related to a dog. I'm related to a butterfly. I'm related to everybody on this panel by blood. We are blood related. that should make us feel more close together.
Yeah.
Are we gonna break out with the song "We Are Family" now?
I don't
We
see
are
the
the
harm.
we are the world.
Right?
All
Sorry,
right.
that was
Who wants to
bad.
sing that one?
I'm good.
Walt Corbin is saying there's there's UFO pics on the cave walls. What's that? 10, 15,000 years.
Right. Around
Yeah.
there, I think we're sure.
Exactly.
At least.
Well, and that's what I was saying. I think that they've always been with us, you know, I mean, even, or at least always been on this earth, you know, certainly way before us. We became aware of them during our evolution because they changed our DNA. Like I said, the Anunnaki did that with us in order to make slaves out of us and use us for slave labor. So that could very well be why you see these hieroglyphs all over the world, and especially in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So
You have depictions of not only spacecraft, you know, the UFOs, but the beings that are maneuvering or piloting them in biblical pictures and paintings. And not only that, but you have there's a lot that's being uncovered about things in Antarctica as well.
well, what about the depictions we see out of South America and even in like Southern America, you know, from the from the Hopis and that sort of thing. You know, you see these depictions of these very strange looking beings. I mean, and a lot of people attribute that to them being gods, you know, for the people. But then again, there's depictions of the Anunnaki out of Mesopotamia, and people just say, well, they're just depictions of their gods. Well, yes and no, but they're also aliens.
What about
Well,
the Nazca lines?
Yeah, and the Nazca lines is another good example.
I hate-
The Nazca lines always blow my mind, actually. I don't know why they did it.
To throw a wrench in this whole idea, we've been analyzing these aliens visually, but to throw a wrench into all of that, they can shapeshift. Have we actually seen what they look like? It could all be a mirage. Every single alien anybody's ever seen could have been a mirage. It could just be a shape-shifting entity. We don't know.
Huh.
It could be just a covering, and they look totally different underneath.
They like secrecy. Perhaps they've never truly showed us what they look like. Why wouldn't they?
True.
Preston Dennett just had a great video. If you go to Preston Dennett channel, it was his. I'll summarize one of his accounts. There was a woman who went to her car. She saw like an incredibly handsome man standing next to it. So it was unlike her character, but she gave him a ride to her house. They had sex. And then she was looking at him standing next to the bed, and he looked like a handsome man. But in the reflection of the mirror, he saw a gray alien, what it really looked like. And then this man went into the restroom, and then he disappeared. There were no windows in the bathroom.
I think I've heard that story, actually. Yeah.
Right. That is just to say that they can't change their appearance.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm of the belief that they are actually walking amongst us now, and we just don't know it because they look like you and me.
Of course.
You know?
Who's to say they even have to have form?
Right. Yeah. They could walk among us and be invisible or not be physical. That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Right.
Yeah. I like the idea that people say that orbs of light are actually like a person. It's actually a being. That's just how they represent it visually. You know what I mean? I like to think about sometimes I have these really vivid dreams. I like to do experiments in my dreams. So sometimes when I realize I'm dreaming, I'm like, okay, it looks so real. I'm like, how could my mind make this up? So I'll do something like one time I was in a rope swing, and then I was like, okay, I'm dreaming, but this is real. And I grabbed the rope and I looked at it really closely, and I could see all the little fibers in it. You know, that was just a little experiment. This other time I was dreaming and I was walking down this road and I was like, this is real. And I got down and I pulled up a flower and it had roots and everything. And I was like, was like, what's happening? Is this real? So I'm trying to say, sometimes I wonder that if I'm dreaming and I'm in some other place, perhaps I appear as an orb when I'm dreaming.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah,
It
so perhaps
is.
when we see orbs is just someone else dreaming at some time, potentially.
Or an alien.
Entirely possible, I think. Yeah.
That would explain why we fly. We're able to fly so much in our dreams. You know, these orbs are anti-gravity. You know, they do fly around.
Ralph and I just talked to a Mongolian shaman yesterday who was into remote viewing, and she's been able to do this since she was like 13. And she described that when she was dreaming, she would remote view, and she said she would be like at the top of the stairs, and then suddenly she would be on the bottom of the stairs, and she described it as flying. And apparently a lot of remote viewers describe it as flying. So I think that's an interesting thought.
Do you want me to tell you this strange dream I have? I'm pretty sure I went to an alien bathroom. Like, I was dreaming one time, and then I had to go to the bathroom. So I went in this big warehouse, and in this big warehouse, there were these little pods. And inside the pods, it was like a beautiful nature. There was like a water fountain and all these trees. And then for some reason, I got the impression that was a bathroom. Like, you go, instead of a toilet, you just go in this little pod, and it's like a beautiful little nature area, and you just use the bathroom wherever you want.
Well, do you remember I was telling you that we interviewed Tony Rodriguez, who claims he's he was part of the secret space program.
I saw that episode. Yeah, I listened to it. Yeah.
On one of the planets that he went to, there was actually like a waiting room that was like that. He described it as kind of a mall, but he described it with waterfalls, and he said it was very beautiful and trees and all that stuff. So there may be some
truth to that. Yeah,
some truth to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
cool.
He didn't describe it as a bathroom,
right. But there's some similarities still there.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we're going to get out of here for the night. But folks watching, thank you very much for coming to Black Lotus and watching our little live broadcast. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit that bell. That's very important. Hit the bell. And if you like what we do here, we have a link in the description where you can go to buy me a coffee, and it's just a one-time donation. You can do it more once if you want, but it's not like Patreon where, you have to commit on a monthly basis, anything like that. So, and you can donate whatever you please. I think the minimum donation is like $5 but whatever you'd like. And it would really, really help us out. But I think until next time, keep thinking and question everything.